contact with distant galaxies, parallel Earths, abductions, implants, the universal higher mind. This is Inverted World Live. Contact with distant galaxies.
Welcome back to another
Parallel
episode
Earths.
of Inverted World Live. I am Shane Cashman. I'm joined by Alex.
How's it going, Shane? Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
How are you?
I'm good.
It's getting to be spooky season.
Yes, it is. And it's the first day of fall.
It is.
And it's very dreary outside.
I love it.
We went to the pumpkin patch today. We didn't get pumpkins yet, but you know.
You just went to visit pumpkins?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just look,
Yep.
we came
Say
here
a
to
little
look
prayer,
at pumpkins.
see if they're doing all right.
We'll be back. to
Actually,
pick
they
you.
did say that the deer were eating all the pumpkins. So
Really?
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Oh, man. It's a curse.
Yeah.
The deer plague. Yeah, I saw some crows and some vultures on the way in.
Always.
That's my happy place.
Just a staple.
Any housekeeping things we got?
No, things seem to be all right.
We're good?
I know that one of our coworkers, we talked about this last week, had dug up some graves that were on the property.
That's right.
And there was one, it was really sad. It said it was like 5-day-old baby that they buried,
that was
and it
so
said
sad.
our baby.
Yeah.
Really
Oh,
sad.
I hate seeing graves like that.
Yeah.
I was,
And 1888.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the. Oh, maybe I shouldn't.
Oh yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Maybe it wasn't that year. I don't know.
I've been working in graveyards in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, and we see
a lot of
baby
that.
tombstones, and it's the worst. New, old. It's the absolute worst thing. Can't imagine. But what we were seeing in those gravestones on this property, I like to think explain some of the visitations we were getting.
Yeah.
In this creepy old house.
Yeah, I feel like I was like really hot for a while, and now it's like cold in here. So it's it could just be there here hanging out with us.
I actually turned the air conditioner off.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what it was.
You make me sound crazy on air.
Yeah. I have to manipulate. It's all part of the freak show. Well, I'm really excited for tonight's episode.
I am too, and please super chat us, send us your
Yeah.
money. Don't forget to subscribe, all that good stuff.
Please, yeah. We'll read the super chats, and today we have someone on who has been sharing stories on Twitter, and I was getting tagged in a lot of them. And I immediately was like, well, this person must be a guest on Inverted World Live. I was really interested in a lot of the stuff he was saying, and it lined up with a lot of stuff I had written for the first season, first book of Inverted World that Alex worked on when we narrated that book and put it on timcast.com about a gentleman who had been an experiencer, who had been taken away by several entities, some of which he called, the Tall Grays, and some of which he called the Palladians. So I was reading a lot of what our guests today have been saying, and it was really interesting. So I'm really excited to bring on...
I'm excited too.
Carroll Vance.
Carroll Vance.
Carroll, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Shane. Thank you for bringing me on. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing a lot of your stuff online, and for sharing stories you've written about your experiences on Medium. I've been reading through all of them. They're fascinating. It's kind of remarkable how much they line up with other people who I'm sure you don't even know. These are people from upstate New York who just have similar experiences. Like we were talking earlier about someone like Dr. John Mack, who's spent a large part of his career interviewing people with similar experiences, and he started out as a skeptic, and the more he talked to people, it was hard for him to look away. And be like, something's happening, something remarkable, something strange, something unexplainable, something that doesn't quite fit in with the reality that we're supposed to accept is happening. So before we get into all of that, if you could just briefly tell everyone who you are, what you do, what you're up to, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So professionally, I'm an electrical engineer. I've spent 40 years as an electrical engineer. I got 3 degrees, 2 in math, 1 in electrical engineering. Was working on a PhD in math. Born very math and physics oriented. So just huge interest in that area. And I was also, at 3 years old, I went to church. My family was Christian, and I was fascinated with these picture books that showed Jesus and him very peacefully with children around him and animals around him. And I thought, oh, wow, that is the coolest thing ever. this super peaceful person.
Right.
And so I've spent my life trying to understand who he is and how he achieved that state of mind.
Wow.
So definitely a theological interest. I was a Christian for 40 years. I just, I dropped out of Christianity just because I understood that love was kind of like the only thing in heaven or reality.
Right.
So,
and you're having these deep thoughts at the age of 3.
Yeah, I would go out into my backyard and completely clear my mind, get into like a Zen state of meditation, and then just expand out into the universe as a 3-year-old. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I thought everybody did that.
Yeah. So when you're doing that at 3, are you going to your parents and saying this, or like?
Oh no, I thought everybody would do that, but by the time, as a male, by the time you get to about 6, you can't do that anymore. It's conditioned out of you.
Right.
You have to start fighting, interact.
Yeah.
It's more of a dog eat dog survival.
It's too bad, because I feel like that type of meditation, that type of imagination is what can connect you to the Creator and to God. There's some type of portal of communication when you're doing that society beats out of everybody. It's like they don't want you to have any communication with anything higher than yourself, because that's very bad. How dare you do that? It didn't work on me for some reason. I'm still 3 in my brain, but I think it's very important to cultivate that. So you're 3. You're having these thoughts about Jesus, and then how far after that do stranger things start happening to you? Is it well beyond that, after 3 or soon after?
Right. Being technical and kind of like being a math prodigy, math genius, I was conditioned that way. And so it was past high school, college, college, when I started, got out into, away from home and that culture. And I think I started remote viewing just spontaneously at about age 19. So it was still there. It was just kind of a latent ability.
For those who don't know, can you describe what remote viewing is?
Right. There's been a government program to find out information on our adversaries. Started back, I think it was early 70s, and they developed techniques to be able to go to a target like you're there, see things, explore around, and give the information back to the handlers, the military handlers.
Right.
And so that's the most well-known remote viewing. Ingo Swann, a bunch of people have written about that.
Right. Was that the Looking Glass? I think Operation Looking Glass, perhaps?
No, I forget. There's been a lot of code names for those programs.
Yeah.
We only know a handful of the programs.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah. When you started to remote view at that age, did you know what was going on? Did you have a sense like I know what I'm doing? Like, how did you come to that conclusion that you were remote viewing?
I had no idea. I just started doing it spontaneously on my own because I was curious. I've always been curious. I want to know how things work. And the biggest curiosity I had was, what is reality? What is Jesus talking about?
Right.
But my curiosity would bring me out into space, to see whatever I was curious about.
Wow. So, before we then jump into the places you're remote viewing, I want to stress for anyone watching who might be skeptical of remote viewing, which is fine, that, again, like you said, the government thought enough of remote viewing to have multiple projects, some of which happened around where we are in the West Virginia world, because it's outside of DC, where they could have these secret little labs, put people in rooms and harness their power to see things in other countries, hidden facts, hidden things happening here and there. It wasn't like all woo-woo. They were like, we think we can do something with this, and we're going to maybe enhance it with psychotropics, I believe some of them were taking. Some of this is like a branch off stuff like MK Ultra. And they would sit there and try to find out. I even think the men who stared at goats might be closely associated with this project. I think they were trying to stop a goat's heart or make a goat's heart explode even with the use of their mind. They're doing all of these things. So it sounds possibly wild to many, and as it should, because it kind of breaks the idea of the reality that we're in right now. But even our wonderful government is out there looking to remote view. So then back to you now, and when you said you're 18 or 19, where are you going, and how are you experiencing this and then learning to harness this?
Well, being mathematical and science oriented, I started studying statistics so I could do proper scientific verification of it, right? So I would remote view my test scores and see how accurate I was. So at the start, you have to learn to calibrate yourself, right? You can't just go, oh, I'm going to go remote view. Well, okay, people can do that. And then they say, well, okay, I got a hit here. I was wrong here, right? But what is the quality of the information? What is the variability on your answers? There's answers and then there's what you see. And I was getting pretty accurate. I was like, on my test scores, I could predict 80% of them.
Wow.
So that was just the start.
And then where does it go after that? Once you realize you're getting 80% of that, are you now like testing yourself and trying to go anywhere?
I started testing myself. I just did it in college just to calibrate myself. We do that in statistics a lot. Human perception's so variable. You try to perceive something and then you get the right answer and you see how far off you are. It's accuracy testing, quality of information testing. Anyway, after college, 5 years, I started work as an electrical engineer. And so that was full time. I had no time to do that anymore.
Right.
So it was a period of about 20 years before I really got back into it.
Huh. Did you know what to call it when it was happening in the beginning?
No, I had no idea.
Interesting. What was it? What was it that made you realize what you were doing? Did you come across a book or talk to someone else who had similar experience?
No, that's not back in the late 70s. The government programs weren't out. Nobody knew about them. There were no books on remote viewing. There's a reason why I was doing this. Like when I was 3, I was expanding out into the universe, right?
Right.
I have past lives doing this,
right,
going back to 30,000 years. And I can tell you a little bit about that.
Well, yeah.
Because we affected the future in weird ways.
Yeah, that's oddly a good segue to where we should go, even though it's a 30,000 year skip backwards.
Right.
But when you're born,
Atlantis.
Right. When you're born, you're 3, you're 19, you're experiencing these things. Is your idea of this ability of the remote viewing and other things you're going to experience later on, is that something that's like seeping through from the past life that you had before? Or is it something else that has come to you?
Yes, it seeps through from past lives because eventually I started jumping into those past lives by locating into them. Whoa. And future lives as well. Both past and future lead back into now in very strange ways.
So we talked about when you were born in this world, in this time. So then let's jump back to the furthest that you think you can remember in terms of your past lives, and where are we? When is that? And how do you think of that? Because some people watching might say, well, that's just imagination, that's just a dream, stuff like that. Like, how do you differentiate that, and how are you confident about all that stuff?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. As experiencers, we question our sanity all the time.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And an experiencer who isn't questioning that, I wouldn't listen to. So I'm jumping back 30,000 years. This is the experience of source that I had. It happened like 30,000 years ago in Atlantis, and it's more real than being here. So in Atlantis times, humans had better psi abilities, right? And as part of that, you experience the world in a much greater capacity. It's like much larger bandwidth. Time is very different. It's like a near-death experience almost.
Right.
So you're able to kind of like go all over time and space as a natural psi ability of the Atlanteans. I call it Humanity 2.0, and many people have these memories of this Humanity 2.0. And by the way, for the future, that's where we're heading. In 2200, 2700, those abilities come back to us. Anyway, getting back to Atlantis, this is the experience of Source that I wrote about. And I didn't put it in there, Atlantis, in my write-up. It just seemed too weird. So I'm dreaming one night, and all of a sudden, I'm like in this beautiful spot in Atlantis. It's like being in Colorado above timberline, do a lot of backpacking and 14,000 foot mountain climbing. And it was just this beautiful alpine field, and there's mountains all around. And all of a sudden, I just like appear there instantly, coming out of sleep. And I'm like hyper aware of everything with this hyper psi ability. And there's this woman in front of me, and she's about 14 feet away, and she's looking right in my eyes and gently smiling. And then she's telepathic with me. And I'm like, I never knew what telepathy was until that moment. And the first thing she communicates with me is, I know everything about you. And
wow.
It's like, whoa.
And you're just hearing that. And you're just hearing that in your mind.
It was in my head, right?
Wow.
Just like the abductees here thing.
Right.
So I'm like, wow, where am I? This is like an expanded version of being a human.
Are you feeling nature? Are you feeling like, do you have sensation outside of just the mind stuff?
It's like being there.
Huh.
So that's a great question. Like I'm sensing everything around me. That Humanity 2.0 is very harmonious with nature. It's like Native Americans. And I notice like there's no wind and I can't feel the sun. So, I backpack a lot. When you're at 13,000, 14,000 feet, the sun is blaring down on you. You feel it on every inch of your skin. And I'm noticing this, just hyper aware of everything around me. It's like being there. It's more real than it is being here right now.
Wow. How did you know you were at Atlantis? Is that something like how did you know?
Yeah, it was some kind of an out of body. So I have some guides that occasionally come in. Not very often. Jesus is one of those, just a few times in my life, just comes to me and says things. And somebody came in and said that to me. So I don't positively know that.
Right.
But I know my human capabilities were far advanced in this body.
Do you think you could locate it in this world?
Yeah, I probably could. I've wondered about that for 26 years. And maybe, the Canary Islands or the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, those islands there. Things change geologically.
And how long?
I don't have the answer to that.
Right. How long were you there? Like when you're with this woman? And
it was a very fast experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it was maybe a couple of minutes, but a lot happened in those 2 minutes.
Like what else? She after she said she knows everything about you, right? So she's basically saying to you, I just know everything you're thinking.
Right.
Are you given more information?
All my lifetimes.
Oh.
Because at that level of psi ability, people see each other's lifetimes. They kind of have this history that goes along with any being. So when she communicated, I know everything about you, she was seeing all my lifetimes, kind of like a download. People talk about in near-death experiences, the kind of life review process where it's all in one thought. So that's expanded. It's an expanded experience of time, like vastly expanded.
Right. So she's not just seeing where you came from. She's seeing everything that happened maybe even before Atlantis. I don't know.
Yeah, and future.
So maybe this isn't. I don't even know how to ask this.
It's like at a soul level.
When
people have near-death experiences, they're seeing all.
But
all
when
this.
when it comes to the timeline and all the lifelines, is this something that you experience or can think of linear? I can't even speak. Like in a linear timeline, like
yes.
Or is there like a multiple layers through space time that are kind of conflicting with one another?
It's mostly a linear timeline, just to shorten it,
right?
Just to get the concept across. It's mostly linear.
And then after that experience in Atlantis.
So let me continue with that experience.
Yeah, please.
My immediate reaction is, oh no, she knows everything about me, like all the bad things as well, right? Because we have all these deep hidden thoughts of everything,
right.
See,
and there's like shame or something inside. Yeah.
She knew I would respond that way. And so her immediate response, which was simultaneous with my thought of being unworthy, was unconditional love. And she just poured this unconditional love to me. And it just filled my mind. And that was my first human experience of unconditional love in this lifetime.
Wow.
And so I just dropped all my defenses and just became completely vulnerable and open and just accept it and let it pour in.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting there now for about 10 seconds in this unconditional love. And then everything disappeared. Everything went black. And now I'm being unconditionally loved by God, the source of all being. And I'm in the kingdom. And I'm like, there's no human perception at all. There's no separate me, Carroll Vance. There's just the loving part of me goes through. And it's this very smooth transition of experience. I'm still me. I'm still me. I'm still me in the world. Now I'm still me in front of God.
Are you
very smooth?
Are you with a physical form, or
no.
You're just stripped of everything except for your consciousness?
Yeah, it's completely outside of space-time. And I would describe it just purely as mind, the mind of God, and there's the mind of me. And in this unconditional love flow, I'm experiencing God, 4 things, 4 points of view. I'm experiencing me being loved by God. I'm experiencing me loving God back. I'm experiencing God as receiving my love. And I'm experiencing God as giving me love. It's 4 things simultaneously. And that is like Jesus's I and the Father are one.
Are you alone? Is there a sense like you're in a heaven place?
So that's my first thought was like, where is everybody? I mean, it was my first thought.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm aware of like this massive like cloud of knowing. There's this great book, The Cloud of Unknowing by this Spanish mystic, I forget who. And it's like beyond infinity. It's not something that a human can comprehend. And I've never been able to communicate it, but it's like all of us, you're there, Alex is there. Everybody everybody I've ever known is there. And they're in this state of incredible happiness and playfulness and childlikeness. And it's an experience of being completely taken care of. That and happiness. And I understand Source as having one agenda, and it's the happiness of all beings that were created by Source and are there.
So
just go ahead.
So what's it like when you leave after experiencing that kind of happiness?
Good question, right? So I'm sitting there in all this, and it's like I'm just getting the basic concepts there. It's kind of like just like a glimpse.
Right.
And it's out of time. So the questions and the answers that follow, it's a logical sequence as opposed to a time-based sequence. Right. So any questions I had are just immediately answered with experience. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm back in the world on planet Earth. And there's a woman about 12 feet in front of me. smiling at me because she knew what was about to happen to me. I was going to have this mind-blowing experience of God. And I'm just like, wow, I'm just completely blown away. And then for about 10 more seconds, I'm there, and then it fades out, and I go back into a deep sleep.
Do you have any idea who that woman might have been?
Yeah, that's my soulmate.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I've known her in many, many lifetimes, probably 100. We've been soulmates.
So that's kind of like
1 out of 10 lifetimes.
There's I forget what they called it, but the Greeks had an idea of having a soulmate that you're separated from. I think I forget what word they used, but it seems like that could be the thing, right? Where you're separated early on and you're spending your existence to find this person. There was, I think, 3 different versions of that, but I never remember the name of it. So was that like your first experience like that, having jumped? What do you call it? Jumped somewhere, or was that bilocating?
It's bilocating. Consciousness is a very strange thing. You can just jump into somebody else's consciousness, which happened to be mine. And so it's bilocation because it's full experience. And sometimes in bilocation, there's the you that you bilocated from on top of that experience. So
you said you've bilocated into yourself. You've bilocated into other people?
For remote viewing, like murder cases and missing people.
Okay.
That's the best source of information I found.
Well, let's swerve into that really quick before we go back into life, past lives and future lives. Because again, when I back to my first Inverted World book, I spoke to a bunch of psychics, remote viewers who were trying to help police solve cases. Police were reaching out to them being like, we need help finding a body. Sounds crazy, but some of these people were effective. And this is in America. I think one was in Switzerland. So are you asked by authorities to help, or are you reaching out to them for saying you can help? How does that work?
So usually it's friends of friends that know I can remote view. And so they'll just contact me and I'll just do it on my own. I'll have a sense of whether or not I can work with police. In the last case, I couldn't work with police, and I know they were involved.
Oh, wow.
It was drugs. It was a murder by people that were involved in the drug trading business.
Oh, wow.
So, and the police were kind of corrupt, so I couldn't.
This wasn't in Long Island, was it?
I usually just work with the family member.
Okay, right.
And they'll hire other remote viewers as well. And we don't know who's viewing, and then we'll find out later.
Wow.
And compare notes.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the past lives and stuff and to your experiences. So at what point, I think you said it was in 1998, you had a situation that happened. Can you describe I think you were hiking, right?
All right. That was this was what started off all these far out experiences of a phenomenon. That was 1996, 28 years ago. So I was in Colorado in the Collegiate Peaks area and just climbing 14,000 footers. I'd just come down from Missouri Mountain and I was sitting there at this beautiful lake that's just south of the peak at 13,000 feet. And it was beautiful. I mean, just nobody was around for miles. Okay. And I'm just sitting at this lake, just looking out at all of nature and the peace that was there. And I see like this 50-foot diameter ship, silver saucer, come down about 100 feet from me, 100 feet elevation. And they just kind of like knock you out so that you are now like in a super deep sleep. And then they do whatever they want to you. And then you wake up. And when I woke up, I had tinnitus in both ears. And it's remained identical for 28 years.
Wow.
So there's probably implants in both ears. 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, I noticed this kind of like bump opposing my elbow. And you can kind of see it here.
What?
Oh, yeah.
That was So they do implants, and occasionally, from what I know, they try to wrap them with your own, they'll take skin scoops, right, and wrap them.
Okay.
So your body will not reject them.
So for those who are,
I think this got rejected.
For those who are,
I don't know. Okay, I mean, this stuff, they knock you out so badly.
But who's they? Can we just explain that a little bit?
I want to unpack a lot here because when I saw the picture you posted, I was like, whoa. And it looks even crazier just now. For those who are just listening, you showed us on your right, inside of your right elbow, what you say could be an implant from this experience. And it's big.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my body growing around it. The doctor said it's kind of like scar tissue around something. He didn't know what the object was. He said, don't worry about it.
But when you tell the doctor, when you talk to the doctor, do they just think you're crazy? Did they ask you if you've had enough water? Or if you do drugs?
How do you
explain
how do you broach that topic at the doctor? They always ask.
It was very cool, but I didn't want to discuss any of my experiences with them.
Right.
I was wise enough not to, but now it's kind of okay to come out.
Right.
I have an implant. It's like a grain of rice seed in my groin as well, groin area. Wow. And that's very common.
So how soon after the 1996 situation, did you know right away about the elbow implant when you woke up?
I didn't know. I didn't notice anything there. All I had was this horrible ringing in my ears.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is terrible. It took me about 10 years to get used to it.
Oh my goodness.
But I was like, what happened to me? I don't, understand this. I didn't know anything about abductions then. I didn't believe in ETs back then, I hadn't read Whitley Strieber's Communion,
Right.
So I was pretty freaked out.
And
from the tinnitus.
A lot of abductions, people say, happen in these forests. You say you saw a saucer, a rather large saucer.
Yeah.
And is that the last thing you remember? Is descending saucer?
That is the last thing I remember.
And then that's it.
They just, as soon as, so if you've been around a saucer, you notice immediately like this override of consciousness. It is a very strange experience. It's like the saucer is conscious and all sound stopped. Everything went quiet. It is, the first time you experience this, it's like a huge shock.
When you say
what is happening?
When you say override of consciousness, do you mean because it just appearing is almost an overload on your senses, or it actually has an effect? Maybe if you might not even know, but on your surroundings.
I think it has an effect on surroundings, and this has been reported a lot in Missing 411. So that was years after my experience. I had no idea that other people reported that as well. One of the common reports is everything goes quiet.
Right.
No more animal sounds, no nothing, no wind sounds, nothing, total silence.
Wow.
And you feel the presence of something, and it's very massive, and it kind of like fills your mind.
Would you say that these, would you classify them as a certain entity? Were these the Palladians, or is it something different?
No, I thought about that, and I don't know who they are. They're relatively benign. I think they're just doing some basic experiments, know. Maybe this elbow thing is like some cancer or virus research, inject a virus. Right. I don't know. I think it's probably the Greys, but I don't know.
Yeah.
There's biological Greys. They're the worker bees. Right. Really, the question is who's commanding those guys.
Right.
And, I could go remote view and look into it, but I've been scared.
Do you think they could see you if you remote view there?
I just don't want to go back into that experience, because after it for like 15 years, I felt there was something in my head, mm-hmm. And that's like crazy land. I didn't tell anybody about this abduction for like 26 years, not even my experiencer friends, because if you have something put in your head, that's crazy land, right?
It sounds like it, but like I said, for the one book I was writing, a gentleman I spoke to has a very similar experience to you. You know, then the people listening who are skeptical, which is great to be, because I'm skeptical of everything as well. They'll say, well, they're just reading different people's experiences and then subconsciously or purposefully making it their own, and that's why they all sound similar. But then I go back to what Dr. John Mack would say, you know, this Pulitzer Prize winning author, not that I respect the Pulitzer Prize really anymore, but, you know, this guy who started as a skeptic started to collect these experiences that were so similar. And what I was going to say is this guy had a really similar experience to you, and what happened with him, and with a head transplant, not head transplant, that's a whole other show we've done, a head implant. And it's weird. And people looked at him like he was crazy. His own family looked at him like he was crazy. But he knows other people with similar situations who definitely didn't know his situation, you know. Maybe they read about it somewhere else. But something he did that I don't know if it's safe or not, or how you feel about it, I'm going to ask you, would you do hypnosis to try to open up that memory, or do you think that's even something you'd mess with?
Oh, yeah, I would do that. There's hypnosis where you're still fully conscious, and that's a pretty safe space. I know people who do that. I probably know 5 people who do hypnosis.
Right. So but when you wake back up from that experience, where are you after that? Like, are you back in the mountain?
I'm just there by that lake. Spend the night. I was backpacking, so it was like a 2 or 3 day trip.
Wow.
Climbing more 14,000 footers the next day.
How long was it until you told anybody?
26 years. I only came out. I went to Archives of the Impossible at Rice University, organized by Dr. Jeff Kreipel. And there were a lot of experiencers around, people that write books, that are well-known podcasters, like many, and we're all friends, and we all talk to each other. And so I kind of felt safe to come out then. So 26 years later.
So you've had like a whole career and a family, and you're not telling anybody about these situations that are pretty important to your life and the way you perceive reality. Is it just because how taboo it's been for so long, up until recently?
Yes, it's very taboo. I mean, it's in the workplace, that's completely taboo. I mean, professionals, we're all serious about things, right?
What do you make? What do you make of the conversation shifting out of the taboo in recent years?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I have a lot of experiencer friends that have suffered hugely because my abduction was very easy on me, just some minor hearing problems, right? But some people have major physical problems, and it leads to divorce, losing jobs, you name it, being outcast from their churches or whatever their social groups are. Right. Not picking on churches. It's just, too much for people to bear. It's a very dark thing, right? And it
changes the whole nature, your perception of reality. I spent a lot of time in a town in Georgia, and there was what a lot of people believed was a UFO experience, but it's also a very heavily Southern Baptist area, and they just didn't feel comfortable saying it out loud because it kind of, I don't want to say it challenged their religion, but it just they felt like it made them sound crazy to their neighbors, right? But alone, they would all kind of whisper, yeah, we saw the UFO land in that yard, and we don't know what it was, and it could have been U.S. made technology or some government technology or something else. I believe I saw you say at some point somewhere that you believe some of these things are extraterrestrial technology and some of them might be government made. Why do you feel that, and how do you feel that way?
Well, when the psi technical devices are used upon you, it opens up your psi ability so you can connect back, right? And you really have a feel of like the energy or the signature behind it, right? Right. So I know what the grays feel like, and I know what U.S. military technology feels like, and so I'll sense the combination of the two, like an agreement. And so that was one experience I had was basically projecting other people's experiences into my mind. It's like a conscious manipulation where I, in real time, am picking up on a recording device that they've recorded on abductees.
How does that work? Are you doing that by accident because of your own remote viewing, or are they sending it to you, do you think?
They're sending it to me. I know it was a direction towards me because I connected back up as a remote viewer, and I immediately remote viewed into like the craft, and I saw a gray running the device, and then I immediately connected into his mind and like asked him, "Why are you doing this? This is a psi device to transmit abductees' experiences into my mind, like severe suffering." It's like a psyche fracturing device. Anyway, so I connected back up into the Gray's mind, and he realized I had enough psi ability to find out what he was doing, so he cut off the machine.
I wonder if they do it. I wonder if they do it to you because you have that ability.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't get into his mind enough to know. I mean, he immediately cut comms off.
Can you describe the look of them, like how they look? And what they're where they are?
3 foot. Yeah, it was a classic 3 foot short gray, and you sense the energy. He's like AI driven, like a worker bee.
Right.
I really wanted to get into the biological beings there. You know, grays, mantids, whatever. I don't know.
Right, because I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you say worker bee, a lot of people believe these are kind of like avatars sent to do the work, right? They're not the actual biological entity.
Yeah, usually if they're an avatar, you can sense into their energy or their history and know they're more like you and me, right? As opposed to AI. This was AI. I've never experienced an avatar. I mean, kind of I have, but it's kind of rare.
Do you think these things are walking amongst us, whether the biological ones or the AI ones?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of breeding, and I suspect I've been around a couple, but it's hard to verify. They just don't act human properly. There's just a lot of things that are off about them.
Okay, so everyone in Washington D.C. is for sure something wrong with them. I've seen you say, I saw you reference something where you were calling it like a peak year, like 1973 was a peak year. Can you describe what that means?
That was statistics gathered about kind of UFO activity, and that was in regards to the spaghetti-like material coming down, like spider webs.
Okay, is that like the angel hair stuff?
Yeah, angel hair, right. Forgot the word.
Can you walk us through what that was?
I didn't experience that. That was a friend of mine that experienced that. And she shared it on Stuart Davis's Aliens and Artists podcast. Yeah. I've heard it from her live in person, the experience.
Interesting. So when you say peak year, it's just like there's a lot of statistical anomalies happening.
Right.
And are there certain, like, were you experiencing things around these peak years?
No,
was it more for you?
They were much earlier. So I think in the mid 90s was kind of peak for some abduction activity. So that was my first real known experience.
Do you think the abductions are still happening? Because there's people out there who are deep in this world who say they stopped at a certain point. Do you think we're still having people, being abducted?
Yeah, I have friends that are being abducted still.
With similar stories to you by similar entities, different ones. I mean,
so if you look at human behavior, we've got a range of activity, right, between good and bad, cruel and kind.
Yep.
And it's a big universe out there. What I found is the range of activity, is like that big. It's like, 10 times larger. So there are so many different groups with different agendas. It's really hard to make sense of, like, who's doing what.
Right. And
none of us experiencers, even getting around, we haven't been able to to say what's going on. What are all the agendas? What are the big programs? We don't know.
Do you think they can observe your past lives the same way you do?
Oh, yeah.
Like, are they aware,
Yeah.
you think, of people's past lives and future lives? Are they like the observer? Like, I watched the show Fringe. I like that show a lot. And they had the people they called observers who were able to, who kind of like alien type people, but they were able to observe all past, present, future at any point, you know? Are they like that too? Because I'm going back to the idea of perhaps you are targeted, right? Because of your abilities and the things you've been privy to, that you might be of interest to some of them for whatever, you know, experiments they want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But this is kind of like getting into speculation. But it's kind of like a near-death experience. They are in an expanded version of time. And so the way they see the world is very different. It's more like NDE or.
And then when it comes to parallel Earths, I believe you said you've witnessed this. Can you explain what that means?
Right. So I had the experience of seeing the Big Bang from beginning to end.
Okay.
And it was.
You got to tell us. You got to tell us how that looks.
It was a photon view. So there's kind of like this massive mind, unlimited mind that created the universe. And it would be this is like a simulation in a way, and that's the simulator, but it's unlimited mind, and it's got an AI interface to it. So if you're curious about things, sometimes that AI will answer in the form of an experience. So I had an experience where I was watching this massive fireworks show, okay, and I was noticing all the fireworks looked the same. It didn't matter. There was no interpretation anymore. My sense of self that was separate was going away, and I was kind of like merging into everything. And then the finale came, and all of a sudden I switched over to a view of the Big Bang. I was out of space-time. I saw the Big Bang from the beginning to end. A photon view. I saw everything that emitted light, and I saw a trillion galaxies, a trillion stars each. Those are the light emitters, right? And from beginning to end, and it was held in one thought in my mind. And this is like, whoa, I've never been that expanded out before. But you get a sense of knowing of what's going on here. So from the initial explosion, the galaxies form, and you see them, they're rotating. So there's linear movement out. There's rotational moments out. Everything's rotating. Rotational energy is like basic physics. And what I sensed, like immediately, I knew those galaxies are like parallel universes to us. There's like Earths in those galaxies that we can never get to, but that's where they are.
So are they mirror images, you think, of this place? Like, are we there doing this like how we're doing it now? Are there slight differences there?
Yeah, there's variations. So I experienced a parallel lifetime that was not as good. This was my life. And the world looked just like this world. Everything was the same. There were the same people around me, but it was a very different experience. Like, I was in jail for murder of somebody. Wow. Like, we have choices to like let things go or not let things go. Well, apparently I didn't let something go. I murdered this person and I ended up in jail.
Wow.
This is part of the spiritual progression.
Do you think our dreams have something to do with these other places?
Yeah, I think it comes through in dreams. That's kind of a lightweight way to interconnect these parallel
it's
universes.
Almost like dreams could be a version of what you're saying with past lives. These other realities or past lives seeping into what you are right now in this material world.
Yeah, I think they definitely creep in. There's wisdom that we learned in all these lifetimes, right? And it it comes together and it gets integrated. And that's the healing process, the universal higher mind.
So I just can't skip over the Big Bang thing, because we got to stick there. You're there. It sounds like you're watching galaxies form. Do you think you're experiencing time in a whole new way? Like, are you there for a long time, but you're back on Earth?
It was one thought. It was 0 seconds.
I see what you're saying.
If time is itself a thought, if you go outside of time, you see that time is a filter. So if you read Donald Hoffman, the case against being able to see reality, he's a philosopher.
Okay.
We have these filters, and time is a filter. And if you drop that filter, basically everything becomes simultaneous, and it's all in one thought. So it's our minds basically go unlimited.
Do you think we've made time as a way to divorce you from what you're saying is a possibility of reality?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. Yes, we made time and we made space for one purpose. And this gets back to the prodigal son story. It's interesting you're asking this, because in Jesus' prodigal son story, okay, the son is in this perfect kingdom, right? And he has everything he needs. He's completely taken care of, and he's happy, exactly like my source experience I described, right? But then something gets into him to make him leave, right? So he steps out of the kingdom. Okay, that's an innocent choice. There was no guilt. There wasn't God saying, get out of here, you're bad. There wasn't the son saying, oh, I hate heaven. It was very innocent. You step outside of heaven. Okay, now you are the interpreter. You are the God, because there's no God there with the ground rules, right? The ground rules of being that I described as source reality. So as the interpreter, you have a choice to make. And the only question is, can you get back in? Okay, at that level of mind, this is unlimited mind, right? And I believe I know the choice from experience was, I can't get back in, and I hate myself. And that's unlimited hate. So to answer your question now, what's a way to kind of like manage that unlimited hate? Well, you can split it, you can fragment it into tiny bits, one thought at a time, and you can symbolicate it as well. So it's not the original thing, but it looks like the original thing, like I'm unworthy of getting back in heaven. So you fracture it in time, you fracture it in space, and you fracture it symbolically. And that's where the universe came. This is a big symbolication machine with space-time. And so I experienced the creation of my soul fracturing out of that. And that was a horrible experience, being in that state of unlimited suffering.
Can you describe that? Like, if that's a thing you can describe with details, like, where are you? What does it look like? Yeah. And also time-wise, like, speaking of time, is this after the Big Bang? Is this before the Big Bang?
This is before the Big Bang. It's before the universe was created. So I was in this space of like unlimited suffering, and it's the specific thought, I'm unworthy of getting back into the kingdom. My father's going to hate me for jumping out, right? And it was unlimited suffering. And I was kind of like just at the edge of that massive suffering. And all of a sudden, I see my soul, which is not me here. It's like all my lifetimes. That was constructed at that point of time. And then I knew, oh, I'm the soul across all these lifetimes, all these parallel lifetimes, making all these choices that are symbolic of that original rejection that I think I will get from my father.
And you're watching this formed how? Like, is there a creator? Is this coming out of just like antimatter? Are you seeing anything?
It's a transition from a space of complete suffering and blackness and nothing, and jumping in to the universe that was just formed with me as a construct and a soul construct, right? It's the construct you experience in an NDE when you see all your lifetimes. Is it okay? That's what I experienced.
is it like a hell, or is hell not a thing that's formed yet in this way you're describing it?
The original thought was hell, for sure. I mean, it was worse than hell. It was worse than any description because it was unlimited suffering. Hell is a symbolication place where all these horrible things happen to you, but it's only symbolic. It's like self-hatred, right? There's nothing outside of you. But this is the fracturing into duality and all of us that are separate, and the fracturing of space into space and the fracturing into time. Those are all fracturing things. So go ahead.
Where does this lead from? You give us the beginning. You're saying you see your soul forge. You're seeing the creation of the galaxies, parallel Earths. Where do we go into the future? Like, I think you've told me you know where you're going to be brought in your next life, right?
Correct, right. So this is like just a flow of time to me and space. And like Shakespeare said, we're all actors, right? And so from that higher level point of view that you're talking about, you're just watching it all flow. And the whole thing was like multiple choice flow. So if you don't learn something, then you're given another chance. That's basically what reincarnation is.
Right.
The issue here, the critical issue is one has to be completely sane to get back into heaven for the prodigal son to return, right? You can't return insane into perfection, right? And so this is like a multiple choice test. With every moment you're determining kind of like parallel timelines. Super complicated. I can't hold this in my mind. All I know is I've experienced the flow for myself just at these tiny critical points in time.
Can you describe where you'll be next?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a Pleiadian contactee, and that's take a lot of time to explain that. But they basically told me that I've got a lifetime there. My mom in my next lifetime just contacted me. They're humanity 2.0 or 3.0. They see things all lifetimes, and so they know all their relationships across these lifetimes. So she just contacted me and told me.
Let's break down what they are to the best of your ability. So for people who don't know what a Pleiadian is.
So they're very much like you and me. In a human form, you couldn't really tell them apart, other than they're very loving. They're spiritually, they have source experiences like me. So I can completely relate with them. They have advanced psi abilities, the communication's off the chart. They live at peace in nature. I bilocated into their planet, like my next lifetime, during my wedding. It was very peaceful. It's green everywhere.
Sorry, you left your wedding? You left your wedding,
Yeah.
Carroll, to bilocate at the Pleiadian planet?
No one noticed.
In my next lifetime.
In your next lifetime.
Bilocated into my wedding.
Okay.
And I'm going to marry.
Again, are these things that are by accident? Or you find yourself jumping there? Like,
Yeah, it just happens. So there's this universal higher mind that's in control of all this, right? And it has to deal with us symbolically. So part of getting back to the kingdom is having a good dream. So, you can't be all freaked out to return to heaven.
Right.
So this is just the progression. We just get better and better dream lifetimes. And this is my last lifetime will be in the Pleiades.
Really?
So it's just going to be very beautiful. Yes.
Wow. How many lifetimes have you had?
I've had hundreds of lifetimes, maybe 1,000.
Do some stick out? Are some like really good?
Yeah, the ones that are bad, nobody remembers.
You repress them?
It's just a waste of time, right? and this universal higher mind is kind of like guiding the show. And so it just shows you, oh, you learned this in this past lifetime. Like if you've been around somebody that's knows the truth, then you'll remember that lifetime, and you'll have experiences of it because it's like reinforcing your training.
Can you tell us about another past life that really sticks out to you?
Oh yeah, Jesus. So I was a student of Jesus, and I was Jewish. I lived in Jerusalem. I was trained classically in Athens at the university there. And I was a mystic, a singer, and I just happened to be a very good singer. I was from a middle-class Jewish family in Jerusalem. I knew some of the disciples that were also kind of like mystical singers, and Jesus comes along, and a friend of mine, she was one of the disciples, she said, well, you got to meet this guy. And so I did. He liked my singing. I started hanging out with them. I'd sing like love songs to God, the Song of Solomon, for example, when he would meditate. So I've jumped into those lifetimes, like bilocated into them and experienced it.
You got to explain to us like what Christ was like.
Yeah, totally.
What did he look like?
He was so peaceful being in his presence. It was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I was there at the crucifixion, and this will give you an idea. So, he's carrying the cross. He's going through these angry crowds. They're like being super mean to him. Like a Roman guard just like takes something out and hits him. And he's like a psi weapon in a way. He just broadcast out peace to the entire crowd. And it went from this super angry crowd to being completely quiet. He'd like overridden everybody's consciousness with this massive, peaceful presence. It was completely mind-blowing. And then it all started back up again, and he went on. So he's just doing that kind of like for training purposes.
When you're there, in your perception of that time, are you knowing he's the Son of God? Are you like, what is your perception of Christ?
My perception is like, who is this guy? Like, wow. This guy is amazing. The Roman Empire was a time of a lot of suffering. It was harsh and short, dog eat dog world. And to have that experience completely override the zeitgeist of that time was just completely mind-blowing. So I knew he knew something, he was connected to something greater. We didn't know what, it was just a mystery to us how this guy did this.
Are there things that you experienced from back then or any other past life that you think we get wrong today?
Yeah, just the experience of source, which he understood. He was going in and out of it, I believe. It's complete. There's completeness. This is like one of the most important concepts of reality. And I think we've got that wrong. We think heaven or the kingdom is incomplete, and wholeness as well is not whole. It's still fractured a little bit in some way or other. So I think most modern philosophies don't really get the completeness of the wholeness. And that they absolutely don't get that the one agenda of God is happiness or happiness. It would just make a huge difference in the way people spoke about things and their point of view and their goals and where they're going. It's well-beingness for all. And that's a striking difference from the Pleiadians. When you see a Pleiadian that's kind of like at this higher spiritual level, the first thing they say to you is be well. And when they're talking to you, they're just thinking of your well-beingness. And when they leave, they say be well.
Right.
So that's a very different philosophy than Earth-based philosophies. And it's that's something I think we got wrong.
So you experienced Christ, and then you told us in the beginning of the show you were 3 looking at images of Christ and compelled to know more. Is that Is that a connection there? Are you, as a 3-year-old,
totally.
not realizing that you had a past life?
Lives. Yeah, if you've been around Jesus and been in his presence for any length of time, you remember that across lifetimes. It's directed kind of like by the universal higher mind. That's your training, and you'll never forget it. You can't. I have 100 friends that were in Jesus's lifetime, and they're all like fanatical about this stuff.
Are we representing Jesus well when it comes to art and imagery?
The ideas there, like if you look at Akian Flamerick, she was like this child prodigy. I think she did the Prince of Peace at age 8, and that's a very good representation. But she's been around Jesus, obviously, and been around some highly spiritual people, and all that is coming through her. Yeah, so that would be one example. There's an example where Jesus showed up for somebody. I forget what the book is, but the painting of Jesus is in Fort Worth, Texas, in a church there. I forget the name, though.
Interesting.
And it's good. It's good, too.
You said you were a Christian for a long time, and how was it that, if you have a memory of Christ in a past life, that you stopped being Christian after seeing him in a past life?
Well, I stopped in this lifetime just because I didn't think the completeness problem. I wasn't seeing in the philosophies of the church I was at, I wasn't seeing the idea that we're completely taken care of. There was a concept of hell and suffering and punishment, and that's incomplete, right? My understanding just from heaven was everybody's there, and my understanding from all these lifetimes and how they all interact is you always get another chance. It's like this choice maze, right? And if you make the wrong choice, well, you get another chance, and eventually people get tired of dying and being reborn, and they get tired of all the suffering and all the diseases and everything here. So it's kind of inevitable that people eventually choose the truth of God and seeing all of life like that.
You talk about future past lives, or future lives, rather. Is there a point where that just runs out? Like, is there an event that stops everything? Is there an Armageddon event, or do things just keep repeating? And this is a waiting room for everyone who is stubborn, I guess.
Yeah, we're all stubborn. There's no difference really between any of us. I just have had more lives. You wouldn't want to see me in past lives. It keeps repeating until everybody kind of wakes up from the dream. And then the whole thing disappears. Like Shakespeare said, in The Tempest, that famous thing, we're all actors on the stage, and, the universe is this little globe that all the actors are dancing upon, but it just disappears into thin air.
I think it's
obviously Shakespeare had experienced what I'm talking about.
Right. And you wrote that when you were talking about your breakdown of the realms, right? So I think it's important for people who are hearing you talk to kind of try to picture this, right? Because it's tough to picture 30,000 years ago, or Palladians, or parallel Earths, or Atlantis, and all these things are happening. Can you tell us how you broke down these realms? And how people can see them and make it easier for them to see?
Right. So everything I'm talking about is within duality, right? It's very chaotic here, and that's part of the fragmentation, the adding of chaos. But there's a higher level view, and the highest level view is from minds, like pure minds. So it's basically the Holy Spirit is like the awake realm. That's where people know the truth. And so eventually I'll completely believe and know the truth, and I'll merge and be one, like with the Holy Spirit. So that's a little different from Christianity.
Right.
And so there's 3 levels. There's the source level, God level. source of all being, the ground of all being. That's the highest level. That was the one Jesus was in touch with. That was my experience. I jumped up there. Then at the bottom, there's the world, and that's the prodigal son. He's suffering. He's in need. Doesn't have enough to eat, eating with the pigs, etc. So this middle level is the thing to talk about. Okay, that's the Holy Spirit. Okay, you got source at top, you've got Holy Spirit in the middle, and you've got the world. You know, Jesus talked about that. The Holy Spirit in the middle is the city high on a hill, the city of light high on a hill that can't, be hidden. So Jesus is using metaphors. He's fanatical about source or God, his Father, and then the world. So there's the kingdom, the world, and then the light is in the middle. Those are the three levels. And it's tri-level metaphysics. And I believe that tri-level metaphysics I believe that's accurate. I've been to all the levels. I've transitioned between them all. And I believe that's kind of what the world got wrong. They're more in bi-level metaphysics. The world down here and God here, and there's interaction between them. And that causes a lot of issues. You get like C.S. Lewis writing The Problem with Pain. How can a loving God cause all that? In a bi-level metaphysics, ontology, it's difficult. But if you make it tri-level and you have the Holy Spirit in between, then the stuff in the world, the suffering doesn't leak up to the top level. Okay, it's buffered. So the most important experience one can have is to be one with the Holy Spirit. It's not really being one with God. You can just, unless you become like a little child, you can't enter the kingdom. You have to be the child,
right?
The wise, infinitely wise child, Sophia, divine wisdom, and then you can merge up into source.
You like age, but you're reverting at the same time throughout all the lifetimes, because you're growing. Right. You say you're gaining knowledge and information, but also trying to strip away the stubbornness of the material world and get back to the childlike innocence. A lot of artists talk about that. I think Picasso is one of them. They're trying to get back to the innocence. Although he was far from innocent as a human being, his art, he was trying to retain or get back to this total freedom. When you talk about those layers, where are these entities coming from? That, like, the things that abducted you, where do they fit into this?
So they're all in the world. All of that is the world. The middle level, I call it the universal higher mind, or Sophia's good, the Holy Spirit's good, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, like brilliant inspired description there in Corinthians 13. Everything within duality, within space-time, is at level 1 in the world. But there are different levels of readiness to go to the universal higher mind, the Holy Spirit.
And why are they there, you think? The things that abduct people, the things that experiment on us or scare us, what are they, in your opinion?
Yeah, the world is a symbolication of that's part of the fragmentation process. It's an indirection to the original infinite suffering of the prodigal son that thought he couldn't return.
Are they part of the test that God or the Creator puts there for us?
No, they don't.
Or are they something else?
Have anything to do with God. It's part of the fracturing of the prodigal son's mind. Once he'd stepped out of heaven and he believed he couldn't get back in, and that was infinite suffering because he's infinite mind. And all of this, all the craziness, is the fracturing of the mind, and it symbolicates out into suffering. So it's no different than eating with the pigs in the classical prodigal son story. So
you're saying it's like a consequence of suffering of the prodigal son, and that's correct, and that shatters reality, which then brings in, I think of them as like a lot of this stuff is kind of demonic. right? They're things traveling interdimensionally, or however you want to think about it, to who knows what. Like you said, there's infinite possibilities of why they are messing around with this realm.
Right. Yeah, definitely they're demons in the sense that it's kind of the lowest level. It's the most suffering level. And so there's a progression from horrible suffering to incredible unconditional love, right?
Right.
And that's the beginning of the journey, is the demonic activity. Yeah, it's definitely there. Experienced my experiencer friends.
Do you attribute a lot of the evil that happens in this world to a lot of these demon type entities entering people's consciousness or manipulating reality?
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. But the way to think about it, it's kind of us doing it to ourselves, because it originated in a unified frame of mind of like unworthy, infinite suffering, basically. So to return back to heaven, it's good to just view it as all symbolication. Just view this entire universe as all symbolication, dreams, everything. We're actually in a dream here, and me talking to you is symbolication. And I'm hoping I'm symbolicating the higher mind when I talk to you.
Of course. And okay, so let's get to the higher mind too a little more, because I know we discussed it a bit earlier, but the higher mind is the thing we want to attain, that you're saying, right? That is what is with the source. That is heaven. This is a place of, you can explain it better than me, when you talk about communication and all this stuff. So what is that more specifically, and what do we get from that? Why is that the utmost?
Yeah, so I had an experience with the higher mind at 60 years old where I merged into it. And if you look at what Buddha said, I am awake, he meant he was that universal higher mind. He had become one with it. And when one says one is awake, that means one is completely outside the dream. And one sees the entirety of the dream, okay? There's no dream part, no symbolication that comes over to the higher mind. So the higher mind's in between. It's the Holy Spirit. It's Sophia, like infinite God, wisdom of God. And it's not God. God's up here. This is like a firewall to separate the two. So, the demons down here can't leak up into God's realm up there. So in the experience of being the universal higher mind, and I just transitioned to it just like normally. I'd been meditating on being this innocent child, but a friend was very much like that, and they just showed me how to do it. I did it for about 10 years. And so I kind of finally believed that I could transition up into this completely innocent higher mind. That higher mind has one agenda, and this is key. It's looking down at all of duality, all the symbolication. It sees all the dreaming ones, like Shakespeare's globe. Everybody's in a dream and believing the world. And it sees all that, and it has one agenda: to wake you up. And it will send to you whatever you can take to wake you up. All inspiration, synchronicities, miracles, whatever you can handle, that higher mind will send to you. Okay, so communication, beautiful dreams, thoughts of everything's going to be okay. It symbolicates the completeness and the happiness of heaven. Fractures it, but it still remains the beautiful perfection of heaven as it comes down to us. And so that's what the higher mind is doing all the time. And that's its only job. And it just will wait there until we're all ready to wake up. But it's outside of time, so to it, everybody already awoke instantly.
So when we think of that higher mind place, is there an end to that? Because you say you saw the Big Bang.
Yes.
Does it then get destroyed? What happens?
No, the higher mind just waits around for everybody to wake up from their dream and to see the truths of themselves, that they're beautiful, created by Source, children of God. And once everybody believes that, they expand out. It's an expansion. The way back to heaven is expansion, because it's such a huge experience. So I just simply expanded out. There were no more thoughts of separation, like me versus you, you know?
Right.
All of those are conflict-based thoughts, right? I mean, why would I want to be separate from you? You know, there's something wrong with you, or there's something wrong with me, right?
Right.
So when the fragmentation part is disbelieved, like completely disbelieved, all through your psyche, your whole being, then you expand out to become one with the higher mind. And then you join with that mind and you help heal everybody else. So you can become a light being, you can jump back. Light being, I've done it one time. I just showed up for somebody that was considering suicide. And I was just like, if the only qualification is being unconditionally loving, I'm not perfect, but I could manage that.
So you're saying you showed up as a light being to someone who was about to take their life?
Yeah, and just showed up and just like unconditionally loved them and said, you know, you're beautiful.
Something I've heard from people who've had past lives, who say they've had past lives. Some people believe that the people with them in this life, perhaps family, were with them in other lives, but in variations. Do you find anything similar to that?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's part of the defragmentation process. It's good to have continuity, you know, rather than keep fragmenting across these lifetimes. So yes, I've been with my family many times, my friends as well, probably you guys, you know.
We've done this before.
Yeah. Maybe
we'll do it again. Well, maybe we won't do it unless I have you as a Palladian on my next podcast, in my next life, whatever that is. So it's, you tell us about a lot of dark things when it comes to the suffering before, you know, you're talking about your soul being created, but it leads to a lot of hope in the way you describe the higher mind and this giant, you know, overflowing happiness. So I hope so, because this world seems rather dark lately. You know, I don't know how it is for you in your experience of time, but this, as far as I know, is the only life I've had, and it seems pretty dark and chaotic. But you're telling us you've experienced something like the crucifixion, which is one of the, you know, most horrible moments of suffering in human history, and there's a lot. So where do you square what we're going through right now, where it seems like reality is falling apart, with our hopeful path to the universal higher mind?
Yeah, we're doing great. I mean, it seems crazy, but the only way to kind of like reintegrate and not have all these forces separating us is to face those forces, you know, those dark forces, and just let them go. That's kind of why Jesus said, you know, forgiveness is the way to solve the fragmentation. And via this forgiveness process, everybody's going to start waking up from the dream, and it's going to be a lot more coherent society. I've had a lifetime in 2700. It's a beautiful lifetime. By 2200, it will be very good on this planet. But we're going to go through some things in the next 50 years, some dark times.
Oh, great.
It's just part of the waking up process. But so you just have to look at the time scale, and people have to have enough lifetimes to kind of like reverse the fragmentation.
Do you think we
reintegrate?
Do you think? What do you think? Do you think we make it through an election? Do we have an election? Is there war on the horizon? How do you see these things? Yeah,
a lot of remote viewers have looked at that. It's all my remote viewer friends. We can't see. Things are very dynamic right now and changing. So I'm pretty hopeful. There were some events we saw that didn't happen, some nukes that were going to go off that didn't happen. I'm very hopeful. I think we're all doing a great job, and it's just painful, but very, very hopeful about the human race. I know it's going to completely turn around here. And
I love that.
We're just doing our job of processing and forgiving, letting it go, and
learning.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Carroll, that's a great way to end this, because I want people to have hope. I talk about a lot of dark stuff on this show, and a lot of, you know, sometimes wild stuff. and we have to have hope, because I still have hope regardless. You know, obviously I have experienced a very different life, and you know, I don't have access to things you're thinking and experiencing, but I still have hope, because I'm looking at history, and as dark as history has been cyclically in this timeline, it's cyclically been hopeful as well after periods of darkness. We just happen to be in a really dark time right now, and it's pretty wild. But I agree with you. I think we're going to figure a way out of it, and pray for better times. Where can people find you online? Where can they read your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Medium, so just search me, Carroll.Vance, 2 R's, 2 L's. I'm also on Twitter, and I've got a wide range of experiences I post on there. But eventually, I'm writing a book on the Gospel of Thomas.
Awesome.
I've been working on it for 20 years, so that'll probably be another 5 years, but definitely Medium and Twitter.
I'm going to say you've been working on it for a few thousand years.
Yeah, I have.
30,000.
Honestly.
Technically. Well, Jesus,
that gives you an idea of how long it takes.
I love it.
Stuff out. I've been very confused.
I love it. This is great, and I'm looking forward to reading more from you online. I appreciate you sharing everything and taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I love talking to you. Bless you guys.
Thank you.
Power to you. Love to you guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Carol. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Man, I got to look into some past lives.
I mean, he says so.
Do you think you've had past lives?
No.
You don't think so? You think it's your first life? You think it's your only life? Is your only life? You're like, this is my only
I don't know.
life. Who knows?
It'd be nice if there's another one, I guess. Can I come back as a house cat?
As a house cat. I'm coming back as a cow if there is a next one.
A cow? You want to be milked?
I don't care. You can eat me. Honestly, like when I drive by cows on the way here.
Yeah. That's what
I do stop. I stop and talk. I'm the cow alone in a field beneath a tree. I'm just like, that's the life.
People love to be like, look, cows. Mm-hmm. So you like that.
People drive by and wave at you.
Yeah.
It'll be me waving at myself. That's what it is every time I see a cow.
Oh, God. Well, I guess we want to come back as animals.
Yeah, well, I guess, what was it, Hindus, I believe you come back? That's the highest form, is a cow?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, we had a caller.
We do have a caller.
Who we got?
We got Scott. Let me bring Scott. It's been a while.
I know. Scott!
Are you with us? Oh, it looks like you're muted on your end, Scott. So unmute yourself.
I guess we want to come back as animals.
What?
Oh.
Here,
Scott, we found another life.
We're in a portal.
As always. Scott, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right on. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good.
Device just went all crazy on me here.
Well, we know how that goes.
Yeah. I want to start off first by, this is my third time calling in. The second time I didn't say hello to Alex. So hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we noticed. We took note. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, is this guy again? He's back.
Yeah,
the story I want to tell kind of connects to what you guys were just talking about, because there's a lot of it ends up, I figure out, talking about past lives. So that was kind of coincidental, yeah?
Yep. I thought it was amazing when you reached out. And you reached out after I had this booked, and you had a brief summary of the story. I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
There's no coincidence.
He just knew. No, the past lives, it all connects.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Well, Scott,
it definitely does.
run away with the story. Let us know what's up.
While I was waiting for your show to start a couple hours ago, I was just watching one of the latest episodes of What Lurks Beneath on YouTube. I don't know if you know the channel, but pretty similar stories. Usually just tells the story, though.
Cool.
Occasionally he'll have a guest, but most of the time it's just a story.
Cool.
But he covered a rural Ohio story that happened in 1981, which is the year I have a memory of the first abduction experience, which turned out was the mass abduction event. And coincidentally, 1981 had one of the Ohio's highest reports of strange and unusual sightings on record in the state at the time.
Oh.
Without further ado, it's evening, summertime, 1981. Saturday night in Akron, Ohio, and my parents are out on a date night. So my late teen sisters, she had to babysit me and my younger brother and myself. Well, she always hated it. My older brother was sleeping over at a friend's house that night, and my younger brother was an early sleeper in those days. I mean, I was 5, he was 3. So he decided to nod off on the couch after we had some excitement earlier during the low light sunset. We had multiple low-flying, unmarked, but super loud military helicopters coming and going from the north to the south in kind of like a search pattern over the park. We lived on a hill above it, which had a super large forested area and multiple trails that led in all different communities and private sports fields. When the helicopter stopped pretty much as soon as the sun had set, I started to watch TV, and from the back of the house, my sister started screaming my name in a panic. So I went to see what was wrong, and she pointed at a white egg-shaped light in the sky out the back window. Of course, I was skeptical because she wouldn't take up any opportunity to mess with me.
Of course.
She was always trying to prank me because I'd get her in trouble with my parents, her friends, her boyfriend. I was a little pest. So I said smugly to her, "It's just a helicopter." As it kept getting closer and closer, though, when I finally realized it wasn't a prank, there was a blinding, whiter than white flashing light, and everything was blank just suddenly. Next thing I know, I'm standing in the middle of the street, in the middle of the night in front of my house. Everything was still very super bright, so it was hard to adjust my eyes at first. I started to make out shapes of people and recognize many that were my neighbors, but everyone seemed to be in a trance and in different states of dress. One of the ladies only had half of her hair rolled up. You know, at the time, women always had hair rollers in their hair when they went to sleep. And I remember giggling in my head over that, and a voice came from the side, and it said it wasn't her fault. Stop laughing. It's like, okay. My vision came back more and more, and I noticed I was the only kid in the group, and neither my brother or sister were here. It was still very bright, and looking down, I could see we were standing in a circle of light. Looking up, I can see the night sky and almost in a transparent type of large cloud above us. On the ground, it looked like it was like being inside of a Johnny Rockets or any of those other 50s neon and bright light type of restaurants. You know, the neon, everything was super bright. It had sort of a doorway, too, where the voice came from that I realized after the fact. Two, like, super tall, skinny, but blurry white beings were flanking the pseudo doorway. And to the right, it looked like an electric, bright, red-based bubblegum machine from the turn of the century. It had an ozone bubble instead of a glass dome that filled the top, and it was filled with colorful electric balls bouncing inside. They were like colored electric balls, and they would just jut out one at a time towards each adult that was around me. And once it hit their head, they just start shuffling back to their homes like zombies. After everyone went back home, I walked inside my house and laid down from exhaustion. Next morning, my mom asked my sister how everything was. I expected a meltdown, but she just said there was some helicopter excitement, just like normal otherwise. I think she may have buried her trauma because she was hysterical, and normally she will let everybody know when she's upset. But fast forward 2 years later, when we moved to California as a family, because my dad got a job as a computer programmer, and in Ohio, it was kind of, dead-end job in California. Silicon Valley, baby. So we were driving to Ventura to visit my grandpa, and we got to the point where it was just hills, were mostly brown hills, and then eventually we got to a point where it had some green where cows were grazing at the center, and I had a memory flood back to me from that night in 1981. I was in a group with all sorts of people that I didn't know, I had never seen before, but we were all out dressed in a similar jumpsuit, wearing a backpack and sunglasses that had like heads-up display like in a sci-fi film. We were hiking in a warm, dry, brown, hilly valley. We got to our destination. It was like an oasis, like out of nowhere. All green, deep blue pool, and a large reaching waterfall that had arms that would loop around the entire valley. And behind each arm of the water from the falls were cave entrances with names written in a language I couldn't read, but I was able to recognize my name, so I figured out that it must have been other people's names. Entering the mine, or the hole of the cave, or if it was a mine, I don't know what it was, I thought I'd get wet, but the water didn't touch me. The walls inside looked moist too, but were dry to the touch, because I had to touch it. Type of robot, I think. I mean, it was mechanical. Entered from a closet and said, "Welcome to your storage locker. Many things that have been important to you in all of your lifetimes are here and always will be. You cannot remove anything, but you can always add. So go live your life." I woke up from a trance in the car after that memory. It had flooded into my head, and I've had that in the back of my mind ever since.
Whoa.
So, yeah, it's crazy, man.
Whoa. So it sounds like you and Carroll have very similar experiences, just different settings.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think he actually has a lot more information. He's like more in tune. I think I'm just like getting things like from the left and the right, and I'm supposed to figure it out maybe.
Right. Yeah, you need more lives. You got to keep.
Yeah, probably.
He's got a lot of lives under his belt. That's crazy. Has anyone? Do you know anyone else who's had similar experiences?
No, not that type of experience. But I mean, everybody's story is like completely different, weird, but I guess they tie together.
Yeah, I mean, they have the same type of theme. That there's a collection place and a lot of other lives, right? It's like almost like the way he describes like a cubby.
Yeah.
You go back and just put your stuff here.
Yeah.
And keep coming back. That's wild.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe tailored towards the flavor of the person's personality.
Yeah. It's also how how we perceive ourselves, and when Carroll was talking earlier, and maybe this might reflect back to how you're talking about your stuff. I was thinking about people in the late 1800s were seeing UFOs, but they believed they were like balloons. But back then they only knew balloons, right? They didn't think of it. They didn't have technology in their life to think of it any other way. But now, when people who are researching this stuff now and look at pictures or descriptions from back then, they look like saucers, but they didn't have the idea of saucer in their mind. They're thinking of just like balloons, hot air balloons and stuff, and airships.
I've seen some of the old art depictions. There was like, they look like balloons, and then there's like all these crazy lights and contraptions coming off of them because they couldn't describe anything else. It's like somebody in a basket instead of a ship.
Right. And our perception has changed now because of technology, and so we have a whole different concept, but then you can look at that into your own personal experiences with what you have, your story, and what Carroll has in his story, and how his story is all these lives, and how they shape his perception, and same for you. Did you tell?
Well, I know a guy that's pretty in tune to a lot of the past life experience and a lot of the things, but to him, most of it is all tied together to ET technology. Like, we call it pixie dust, but to them, it's just like normal everyday things.
That's interesting. When you had your...
I can have him send you a message if you want to talk to him.
I mean, yes. Of course.
He's been around forever. I actually got connected to him through actually Captain John Lear.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, totally send them our way. I love to hear all these stories. When you had your experience that you just talked about, either or, whether it's the one in the car or from, I think it was a year or two earlier, did you tell anybody? Like, did you think like, I can't tell anybody, this is just insane? How long did you wait to say
as a little kid, I felt, I'm not going to tell anybody this. They're just going to say, you've watched too many cartoons, or you eat too much cereal, all the sugar or whatever.
Right.
So I've just kind of held on to it. And then like randomly people that I felt comfortable with, maybe less than a handful, I've told the story to, or stories to.
Right. Yeah. It seems
because they've had stories too. And it's like, what, I need to share too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to hold in, like Carroll's saying, he held on to it for 30-something years, perhaps, and
didn't tell his family.
The guy I was saying I wrote the story about that we did the first Inverted World with, I don't think he told anybody until years after he was married.
Yeah.
And these are life-changing.
Years later, I'm finally telling people most of my stories.
And these are pretty life-changing experiences. I know for people who hear it, they're like, well, it could just be a dream. It could just be a weird, you had a night terror, depending on how scary it was. But it's odd. I highly recommend everyone looking up Dr. John Mack and his interviews with people who've had these types of situations, these experiences. And, I don't know how to define all these things. And neither did he.
Wrap your head around it if
neither
you haven't
did he.
Experienced it.
But he went from being a skeptic.
I don't think it's for humans to be able to describe any of it, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's it. That you nailed it. It's not for us to understand. It's like how science is. Science is cool. It's interesting. Okay, but you're never going to get that answer. Yeah. That giant, capital T truth, because even science, look at it, that they change it all the time. What is science?
Well, each experience is like a piece of a puzzle that doesn't belong to any other puzzle.
Right. Yep. It's all your own experience, and how we were saying earlier, the way you perceive it. You can't fully match up everything, but they do fall in line when you start to piece these things together, like what I'm saying with Dr. John Mack. He interviewed, I think, at least 100 people, maybe more, for his book, Abduction.
And he's like, at a certain point, you can't not see a pattern here. He's not saying exactly, he knows what it is, but there's something for sure going on. And like we've seen with a lot of callers on the show and guests, there is clearly something happening.
Oh yeah, it just depends on the perception of anybody. I mean, I think like your guest just tonight, he was saying there's levels, and I think it just depends on which level you reach. It doesn't matter. I mean, you could be like near the highest level, you still don't know anything.
Right. Do you? I think you have children. Am I wrong?
Yes, sir.
Do you now look at them, and if they tell you something a little like wild, like one of your stories, do you find yourself being a little more open to?
Oh, I always have been. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had an experience where I watched my son get abducted while the abductors just kind of smiled at me and like playful children. So, yeah.
Wait, I don't think you told us that one before, have you?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, you might as well just tell us that right now. You can't not know that story.
Well, I was sleeping in bed as normal. My son, he was not newborn, but he wasn't a year yet either. I can't remember how old he was exactly. But in our house, throughout the house, we have skylights. It's an old Eichler house, and it was built back in the 50s. So every house in that neighborhood had some sort of sloped ceiling.
Yep.
And just skylights everywhere. So one night I was laying in bed, and I could see down the hallway for where I'm at, and a light kind of appeared through the skylight. And then suddenly, just 5, 6, maybe 7 children-sized, white people, but they were dressed kind of like the kid. I don't know if you've seen the movie Labyrinth. Little brother, he's dressed in the striped onesie. Mm-hmm. They were dressed like that.
Oh boy! But
they didn't touch the ground when they walked, but you can see their legs moving, and they ran towards the crib, which is to the left of me on the bed from the bed. And they just started, they were running around, playing. They had like a ball they were throwing around. They kept looking at me, smiling like they had children having fun. And then suddenly one grabbed my son, and they just started dancing around with him, playing with him. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this large, or not large, it's wide but really short, maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, kind of tattered old woman. I don't know, she's brown. Couldn't see her face. The best way I can describe it, again, if you've seen the movie Labyrinth, when they're in the junk scene, there's that woman puppet walking around. She's all brown with a giant backpack and junk all over her. Mm-hmm. And she's just walking around collecting stuff in the movie. That's kind of what that looked like without the backpack.
Okay.
And I think it was more like the parent telling the little children what they're supposed to do, stop playing around, get back to work, because they all started stop smiling. And instead of running, they just kind of walked and went back to dutifully doing their job.
Wow.
But the one that was holding my son walked up to the skylight, held it up above its head, and the light beamed down, and my son just disappeared. And he smiled at me, and he disappeared. And then the next morning, my son was back, but he was in the bed with me.
Wait, what did you do, though, in between? You just went back?
I just laid there. I couldn't move. I just watched. I was like, what the heck is going on here?
Like, you couldn't move in terms of it was a paralysis situation? Or?
I don't know if it was paralysis. It was more of confusion. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever been completely confused by something and you just can't move, but it's not like you can't move because you're scared.
Right.
That's why he wants to be a cow.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah. So, child disappears. You fall asleep soon after this?
Yeah, I don't know if I fell asleep. I just blacked out. It was kind of like when in movies where they just kind of suddenly just pass out.
Right.
It kind of that.
And when the child reappears, what is that conversation? Is there a conversation?
Well, he was little, and my wife had no idea what was going on. It was just me seeing the whole thing.
What did your kids say?
My daughter was in another room sleeping because she was maybe 2 at that point, so she wouldn't have said anything. I don't think she would have noticed anything, honestly.
Right.
My son, he couldn't speak, so he didn't say anything either. I just kind of was happy that he was back, and he seemed really happy to be sitting with me.
I wonder if he experienced what you experienced.
Man, it's quite possible. I mean, I have so many gaps. I mean, like I said, when I saw the patch of green, I had the flooding memory come back.
Right.
Randomly, it happens to me if I just see something, just a speck of light somewhere. Something, oh, wow, I remember this now.
Right. It's like a larger, more supernatural version of putting on a CD, and a certain song brings you back to when you were 12, in like a certain summer. It's like a fingerprint of memory, but obviously to a much weirder degree, because you're thinking about other places you've been transported to.
And it's also completely emotionally attached to you for some other reason, and it just continues to build.
Right, man. Well, we will have you back to talk more stories, Scott. We appreciate you calling in again.
Hey, no problem.
God bless, and don't disappear before the next. Well, maybe you should disappear before the next phone call. Have another story to tell us.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I've got a lot more.
Sweet.
Like I said, they flood back to me sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about this part.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, keep in touch, man. We'll have you back.
Take care.
All right, thank you guys.
Later, man.
Sorry.
Man, they're crazy. I'm glad we had both those guys talk on one. Every time I drive home, I think I'm probably going through multiple portals.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. You don't think there's vortexes out there?
Yes.
Just waiting
maybe
to catch you? Like something like
I wish I would experience some
like
of
in
the stuff,
Acme,
honestly.
like wherever the Wile E. Coyote got his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think there's a lot of vortexes out there that I slip through. For sure.
Sometimes I think about, you have a 4-year-old, I have a 4-year-old. I'm like, and I'm hearing these guys talk about being 3 and their kids, and like, do you ever wonder like what your kid's first memery is going to be, or like, are they going to experience, like, what will they remember? What are they going to experience that's just going to hold on to their lives?
I don't know. I was thinking about my daughter had a weird thing where she was sleeping in her bed. It was nap time, and her curtains are drawn, right? And I know she was in that room, and she was not awake, not looking out the windows or anything. While that was happening, while she was sleeping, her older brother and I were outside cleaning up a dead bird that had landed in our right in our front, not the front yard, in the patio, and right out the front door actually. And so we're like shoveling it up, and he's all into it. He's like, "Oh, what's this dead bird all about?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's check it out." So, check out the dead bird and put it away, come back in the house, give him lunch. His sister wakes up. The first thing she says is, "Why is there a dead bird outside?"
Oh my God.
I know. We did not talk about it. Like, she knew, she did not know what we were doing. It was very weird. She has a sound machine thing going on in her room.
So was she like there?
I don't know what went on with that girl, but she keeps having these things going on.
Yeah.
Where she's kind of like tapped into weird stuff.
She tapped into things.
That affected her in thinking of like memories that stick with you, because after a while she would see dead birds a lot. And I'm like, and then they kept winding up at our house.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta get rid of this dead bird before our daughter sees it, because it's like, I'm gonna keep traumatizing her, because she thinks, I don't know if she thinks they're connected to her or not, but she's seeing them all the time. I'm like, I gotta clean up this dead bird.
Well, I guess we'll see if that sticks with her.
We'll see. We'll have her call in 15 years. But yeah, I don't know. I think about the memories all the time. I think about my memories. I think about memories I think are real.
Yeah. See, memories. See, I can't get past like, memories versus dreams. Like,
that's why I ask everybody about how do you differentiate between them.
It's not very
because it's hard.
Though.
Some people are very confident about it. I know I have memories as a child that I thought when I was a child they were real and they were happening then, and then that was a memory. But I can look back and be like, I know that was a misinterpretation of the reality. Like, I know that I didn't see a Tyrannosaurus Rex footprint, whatever it was, in the ground, because dinosaurs were never real anyway.
Yeah.
Ever, right? You thank you, Alex. You don't believe in dinosaurs? They're gonna be like, say it, Alex. There's no dinosaurs. Okay. But I thought I saw a dinosaur hoof print as a child. And I would tell my parents all the time. They're like, no, you didn't see that. I'm like, I think I did though. But you did. But I don't think I did because I don't believe in dinosaurs. But
just because you don't believe in them doesn't.
It could have been a dragon.
But you believe in dragons?
Yeah, there's for sure dragons.
Okay. For
sure dragons. They got rid of dragons because they didn't want us to think how magical things were.
I believe whatever the movies tell me to believe. I'm kidding.
Hopefully you're watching the right movie.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I love thinking about that with memories, and I actually talk about memories with my kids a lot and try to make them very observant to their surroundings and to like thinking about the things. So I think that's important about, observing yourself, your perception of reality, what people are telling you, and really trying to like stay plugged in. Like it's very important because there's so many people who don't think about anything.
Yeah.
Maybe they're NPCs. I don't know.
Well, some people just don't have the capacity with their mind.
Well, they never learned it. They have it. I think they.
You think everyone has
unless they're an NPC, I do think you can work those muscles to be observant.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Well, we all born with souls.
I like to think so, but I think there's a lot of people here dropped here.
Dropped here.
Dropped here just to screw with me. Well, that was a fun episode.
Yeah, totally. I think everything went well.
I think, are we out there? Are we still?
I think
did the Palladians stop this podcast?
We're in a different life right now.
Sweet. Well, do you want people to find you online or not?
Sure, you can find me. I am Alex Ayala. Good luck on X,
yeah, for now.
Yeah. And also, continue to subscribe and super chat, call in with your stories or whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, you can hit me up at ShaneCashman@scanner.com, SCNR.com. Send me your stories. We'll have you on. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.